In the shadowed jaws of Devil's Backbone, 6 truck drivers roll into a blood-soaked ambush. But what if they're battle-hardened veterans hiding a deadly past? One will fall, clutching a tear-stained letter for a son he'll never see, as a chilling DEA secret threatens to bury their mission in flames. Can Jack Sullivan save the desperate town of Esperanza, or will he lose his estranged daughter forever in the chaos? Hit that subscribe button now to uncover the truth. The sun hung low over San Antonio, casting a golden haze across the cracked asphalt of the Borderline Logistics yard. Dust swirled in the dry Texas wind as Jack Sullivan, a weathered 53-year-old with a face carved by decades of war, ran his calloused hand along the side of a battered semi-truck. His sharp gray eyes flicked to the clipboard in his grip. Medical supplies, water purification gear, food rations, all bound for Esperanza, a forgotten border town choking on poisoned water and cartel shadows. Jack adjusted his faded ranger's cap, the only remnant of a past life in Army Special Forces, and squinted toward the street. A black SUV rolled by, tinted windows gleaming like the eyes of a predator. It was the second time he'd seen it in an hour. "Tom, you catch that?" Jack's voice rasped, low but steady, as he nodded toward the retreating vehicle. Tom Baxter leaned against the truck beside him, arms crossed, his Carolina drawl cutting through the hum of idling engines. "Third pass, boss. Ain't no coincidence." At 50, Tom's lean frame still carried the taut discipline of Force Recon Marines, though his mop of graying hair betrayed years spent under the sun. He spat into the dirt, eyes narrowing. "Los Lobos, I'd bet my last dime. They've been sniffing around these border runs lately." Jack didn't respond right away. He scribbled a note on the manifest, his mind already 3 steps ahead, mapping contingencies like he'd done in deserts and jungles half a world away. The team wasn't just drivers, they were survivors. Veterans of America's hardest wars, hired by Borderline for runs no one else dared touch. Esperanza needed this convoy. Without it, kids would die, families would break, and the town would slip deeper into the grip of men like Victor Salvazar, the brutal kingpin of Los Lobos. The roar of a second engine snapped Jack's attention back. Chris Navarro strode up, his broad shoulders squared like he was still storming beaches with the SEALs. At 48, his dark hair was streaked with silver, but his movements were deliberate, honed by years of precision. "Routes locked in," he said, tapping a folded map against his palm. "Devil's Backbone is our choke point. Narrow, steep, perfect for trouble. Ethan's got the alternate mapped, but it'll add 8 hours." 8 hours Esperanza doesn't have," Jack replied, his tone flat but final. He glanced at the cargo again. Antibiotics, IV drips, purification tablets, every minute mattered. Chris hesitated, then pulled a crumpled envelope from his jacket. "Found this in the glove box while I was checking comms. Meant to mail it yesterday." He handed it to Jack, who unfolded it carefully. Scrawled in Chris's tight handwriting were words meant for a son in California. "Danny, I ain't good with the soft stuff. Every mile I drive, it's for you. Don't end up like me, chasing ghosts. Live clean." Jack's jaw tightened as he handed it back. "You'll get it to him," he said quietly, "after this run." Across the yard, Ethan Carter emerged from beneath a truck hood, wiping grease from his hands. The former Delta sniper, all lean muscle and quiet menace, gave a curt nod. "Engines are solid. We're green." His voice was clipped, eyes scanning the horizon like he could spot a target a mile out. Which he could. At 45, Ethan was the team's shadow, a man who spoke little but saw everything. Luke Harper, the youngest at 42, jogged over from the warehouse, his easy grin a stark contrast to the other's grim focus. "Supplies are locked down, boss. Got enough antibiotics to save a small army." His energy masked a past in special ops where he'd pulled men from burning wrecks more times than he cared to count. Ben Riley rounded out the crew, stepping from the last truck with a diagnostic tablet in hand. The former para-rescue jumper, broad and steady at 49, flashed a thumbs up. "All systems go. We're ready when you are." His calm was a bedrock the team leaned on, a quiet strength forged in chaos. Jack gathered them around the lead truck, spreading the map across the hood. "We roll out in 10, standard spacing till the mountains, then tighten up at Devil's Backbone. Comms stay open. That SUV's got Los Lobos written all over it. They'll hit us where the road narrows." He tapped the choke point with a scarred knuckle. "If they do, we don't hesitate. Primary objective, get these supplies through. Esperanza's counting on us." The men nodded, their silence heavy with decades of shared instinct. They weren't just drivers. They were a brotherhood, forged in places like Kandahar and Fallujah, now fighting a different war on home soil. Jack's gaze lingered on each face, knowing what they'd face, knowing what they'd already lost. He thought of Sarah, his daughter, somewhere out there. 5 years of silence after she'd screamed that he'd chosen war over her. He pushed the memory down, focusing on the mission. Tom broke the quiet, his voice low. "This ain't just about supplies, is it, Jack? You're chasing something else out there." He didn't wait for an answer, turning to load his gear. Jack let it hang, the unspoken truth gnawing at him. Tom was right. He'd been running toward redemption ever since he'd walked away from his family. As the convoy rumbled to life, Sheriff Dan Coleman watched from his patrol car across the street. A 20-year veteran of border law enforcement, he'd seen Borderline's crews pull miracles before. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, tell Border Patrol the convoy's moving out for Esperanza. 6 rigs, usual crew." The crackled reply confirmed what he feared. Border Patrol's tied up north. Political mess in Las Cruces. They're on their own. Coleman sighed, holstering his radio. "Wouldn't be the first time," he muttered, eyes tracking the dust trail as the trucks rolled west. He'd worked with Jack enough to know the man's quiet wasn't softness. It was steel, tempered by battles most couldn't imagine. 3 hours later, the flat desert gave way to the rugged foothills of the Sierra Madre. The convoy moved with precision, each driver scanning the terrain, mirrors, ridgelines, shadows. To outsiders, they were just truckers. To anyone who'd fought beside them, they were warriors who'd never truly left the battlefield. Luke's voice crackled through the radio from the rear truck. "Lead, this is 6. Black SUV just passed me, heading north, then doubled back, tinted windows, keeping distance." Jack's grip tightened on the wheel. "Copy 6, maintain speed. Everyone, standard procedure." Standard procedure meant weapons checked, dash cams rolling, minds sharp. The SUV wasn't just scouting, it was the first domino in a game Jack knew too well. Devil's Backbone loomed ahead, a jagged scar in the earth promising trouble. What waited there? And what would it cost them to get through? The Sierra Madre loomed like a jagged beast as the convoy snaked toward Devil's Backbone, a narrow pass carved into the mountains south of Esperanza, Texas. The road tightened, cliffs rising steep on one side, a sheer drop yawning on the other, a perfect kill zone. Jack Sullivan's hand stayed steady on the wheel of the lead truck, his gray eyes flicking between mirrors and the ridgeline above. The black SUV Luke had spotted trailed them at a distance, a dark omen in the fading light. Dust swirled in the wind, coating the windshield, but Jack didn't blink. He'd survived ambushes in worse places, Iraq, Afghanistan, but this was home soil, and that made it personal. "Lead, this is 3, Ethan Carter's voice crackled over the radio, calm as a sniper lining up a shot. "Movement on the ridge, 3 miles ahead, multiple positions." Jack tapped his earpiece. "Copy 3. Everyone hear that? Company's coming. Stick to the plan, tighten formation, eyes open." The trucks closed ranks, their engines growling in sync, a steel lifeline carrying Esperanza's survival. Tom Baxter's voice cut in from the second rig, his Carolina drawl edged with tension. "They're not even hiding, Jack. That's either arrogance or a damn big crew." Jack didn't reply. He'd seen it before. Cartels like Los Lobos thrived on fear, not subtlety. Victor Salazar, their brutal kingpin, wouldn't send a scouting party. This was a strike. Inside a makeshift command post half a mile up the ridge, Victor Salazar traced a scarred finger along a map of Devil's Backbone, his dark eyes glinting with cold certainty. At 38, he'd clawed his way to the top of Los Lobos with blood and bullets, a trail of bodies earning him a name whispered in terror across the borderlands. "This is it," he growled, voice rough as gravel. "Steep cliffs, no escape. We take the convoy here." Beside him, Isabel Ruiz studied satellite images, her sharp mind a counterpoint to Victor's fury. At 35, she was his most trusted lieutenant, a strategist who saw patterns where others saw chaos. "6 trucks, 6 drivers," she said, frowning. "But something's off. My sources say they're ex-military, special forces maybe." Victor waved her off, adjusting the pistol at his waist. "Retired soldiers playing truck driver, old men past their prime. After today, they'll feed the vultures." Isabel's lips tightened, unconvinced. "Underestimating them could cost us," she warned. Victor smirked. 50 of my best against 6 has-beens? I'm not underestimating, I'm crushing them." Back on the road, the convoy rounded a bend and the trap snapped shut. A fallen tree blocked the pass, its trunk too thick to be natural, an obvious cartel play. Jack eased his truck to a stop 50 yards out, the others following in precise intervals. Figures emerged on the ridgelines, rifles glinting in the dusk. "Showtime," Jack muttered into his radio. "Execute as planned." Victor watched through binoculars, a predator savoring the kill. "They've stopped. Too easy." Isabel scanned the convoy, unease prickling her spine. Something's wrong. Below, Jack stepped out, hands raised, his blue work shirt and jeans painting him as a civilian. "We're carrying medical supplies for Esperanza," he shouted, voice echoing off the cliffs. "Let us pass. People are dying without this." Victor grinned, signaling a rifleman. A shot cracked, kicking dust near Jack's boots. He didn't flinch. "Last chance," Jack called, his tone shifting. Harder, colder. "Walk away. We're just truckers trying to help." Victor raised his hand to unleash hell, but Jack touched his earpiece and barked one word: "Now." The convoy erupted. Side panels dropped, revealing reinforced positions. Ethan and Ben took elevated cover, picking off cartel spotters with surgical precision. Tom and Luke lobbed makeshift smoke from burning tires, clouding the pass in choking gray. Chris, still in the third truck, roared forward with a chainsaw, cutting through the tree under covering fire from Jack. "What the hell?" Victor snarled, watching his ambush unravel. Then it went wrong. A cartel grenade arced through the smoke, landing near Chris's truck. The blast threw him back, shredding his left leg. Blood soaked the dirt as he screamed, "Jack, go! Don't let him win!" Jack spun, instinct warring with duty. Tom bolted from his rig, yelling, "We're not leaving him!" But Jack grabbed his arm, dragging him back. "If we stay, we all die, and Esperanza gets nothing. Move!" Tom fought, his fists clenched. "You son of a bitch! He's family!" Jack's face hardened, but his voice cracked. "I know. That's why he's doing this." Chris fired his carbine one-handed, holding the line as the team pulled back. His shots faded into the night, swallowed by cartel gunfire. The convoy punched through the gap Chris had cleared, leaving him behind. Inside the cab, Jack gripped the wheel until his knuckles whitened, the echo of Chris's last stand ringing in his ears. Tom slammed a fist into the dashboard, tears streaking his dust-caked face. "You left him, Jack, like he was nothing." Jack didn't answer. He couldn't. The road stretched ahead. Esperanza still miles away, but the weight of that choice already crushed him. On the ridge, Victor cursed as the trucks vanished into the smoke. "They're not civilians," Isabel said, ducking a stray bullet. "They're military-trained, coordinated." Victor grabbed his radio. "All units, pursue! They don't leave this canyon alive!" But his men hesitated, rattled by the unexpected resistance. Isabel's mind raced. 6 drivers had just turned their trap into a slaughterhouse. Who were these men? The convoy rolled on, battered but unbroken. Luke's voice came through, shaky. "Lead, we lost Chris. What's the play?" Jack swallowed the lump in his throat. "We get to Esperanza. We finish this for him." Ethan chimed in, his sniper's calm unshaken. "They'll hit us again, harder next time." Jack nodded to himself. Let him try. Behind them, Chris's truck burned in the pass, a pyre marking the first blood of a war none of them wanted. Jack thought of the letter in Chris's pocket, now ash, and the son who'd never read it. He thought of Sarah, too. 5 years gone, her voice still haunting him. "You always choose the fight over me." Maybe she was right, but tonight the fight had chosen him, and there was no turning back. The convoy rolled into Esperanza under a sky bruised purple by dusk. The Texas border town's crumbling streets bathed in the faint glow of flickering streetlights. Dust clung to the truck's dented frames, a grim testament to the hell they'd escaped at Devil's Backbone. Jack Sullivan's hands ached from gripping the wheel, his gray eyes hollow as the echo of Chris Navarro's last shots replayed in his mind. The silence inside the cab was suffocating, broken only by the low rumble of engines and the occasional crackle of the radio. Tom Baxter sat beside him, staring out the window, his jaw clenched tight. The air between them crackled with unspoken fury. Tom hadn't said a word since they'd left Chris behind. Jack keyed the radio, his voice rough but steady. "All units were in. Unload at the clinic, then secure the perimeter. Let's move." The team responded with curt affirmatives. Ethan Carter's clipped "Roger." Luke Harper's shaky "On it." Ben Riley's calm "Copy." No one mentioned Chris, but his absence hung over them like a storm cloud ready to break. The trucks pulled up to the Esperanza Community Clinic, a squat brick building flanked by a crowd of desperate townsfolk. Thin faces, sunken eyes, hands clutching empty water jugs. Jack stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and slung his rifle over his shoulder. The cargo doors creaked open, revealing crates of antibiotics, IV drips, and purification tablets. Esperanza's lifeline. A gray-haired man in a faded lab coat pushed through the crowd, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I'm Dr. Henry Brooks. Thank God you made it. We've got kids dying from the water, lost 2 this morning." "We've got what you need," Jack replied, nodding to the team. "Start unloading." Luke and Ben hauled crates down, their movements mechanical, while Ethan scanned the rooftops, his sniper's instincts never resting. Tom stayed by the second truck, arms crossed, staring at nothing. Jack approached him, voice low. "We need you here, Tom, not back there." Tom's head snapped up, eyes blazing. "Back there? You mean where you left Chris to die? Don't lecture me about where I need to be." Jack's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He'd made the call, right or wrong, it was done. The mission came first, always had. A young woman in scrubs emerged from the clinic, her auburn hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She moved with purpose, directing volunteers to stack supplies inside. "Prioritize the antibiotics," she called, her voice firm but strained. "We've got a girl, 8 years old, septic from bad water. She won't last the night without it." Jack froze mid-step, his breath catching. That voice, 5 years hadn't dulled it. Sarah Sullivan, his daughter, stood 20 yards away, oblivious to the man who'd walked out of her life after her mother's death. He watched her, rooted to the spot, as she knelt beside a crate and pulled out an IV bag. Her hands trembled slightly, exhaustion, not fear, but her focus was razor-sharp. A little girl, Lily, lay on a stretcher nearby, her small chest heaving with shallow breaths. Sarah hooked up the IV, murmuring softly, "Hang on, sweetheart. We've got you now." Jack's chest tightened, a flood of memories crashing in. Sarah at 10, bandaging a scraped knee with that same fierce care. Sarah at 17, screaming at him in their old Houston kitchen. "You're never here, Dad. Mom's gone, and you're still fighting someone else's war." He'd left the next day, deployment papers in hand, and hadn't seen her since. Tom noticed Jack's stillness following his gaze. "You know her?" he asked, suspicion lacing his tone. Jack didn't answer, turning back to the truck to hide the tremor in his hands. "Just help unload," he muttered. Tom snorted but complied, heaving a crate with more force than necessary. Inside the cab, Jack pulled Chris's crumpled letter from his pocket, the one he'd handed back hours ago. It was all he had left of his friend, a lifeline to a son in California who'd never know his father's last moments. He keyed the radio, voice breaking slightly. "Team, listen up. Chris wrote this for his boy Danny. I'm reading it now, so we don't forget why we're here." He unfolded the paper, the words blurring through a sting in his eyes. "Danny, I ain't good with the soft stuff. Every mile I drive, it's for you. Don't end up like me, chasing ghosts. Live clean." A choked sob came through from Luke. "God damn it, Chris." Ben's steady voice followed. "He was the best of us." Ethan stayed silent, but Jack knew the sniper felt it too. Tom slammed a crate down, turning away, but not before Jack saw the tears streaking his dust-caked face. "He didn't deserve that," Tom rasped, barely audible. "Not for this." Jack folded the letter, tucking it back into his jacket. "None of us do. But we keep going. For him. For them." He nodded toward the clinic, where Sarah was now distributing water tablets to a line of families. Dr. Brooks approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "You lost someone out there, didn't you?" he asked, glancing at the team's haunted expressions. "Friend of ours," Jack said simply. "Held the line so we could get through." Brooks nodded, no stranger to loss in this border hellhole. "Esperanza owes him. We've been begging for help for months. Border patrols stretched thin, cartels running wild. You're the first to make it." Jack's gaze drifted back to Sarah. She lifted Lily onto a cot, the girl's breathing steadying as the antibiotics kicked in. He remembered her mother, Claire, practical and fierce, teaching Sarah to help others no matter the cost. He'd failed them both. Chose missions over mourning, duty over daughter. Now here she was, saving lives in a town he'd come to save. And she didn't even know he was there. Luke's voice crackled through again. "Lead, got eyes on that SUV again." Circling the outskirts 2 miles east, Jack's head snapped up, the past shoved aside. "Copy. Ethan, get high ground. Everyone else, finish unloading, then lock it down. They're not done with us." Tom shot him a look, bitter but resigned. "You think they'll hit us here? After what we did?" Jack met his stare, unflinching. "I think they'll hit harder. Los Lobos doesn't forgive." He turned toward the clinic, where Sarah's silhouette moved against the lamplight. Whatever came next, he'd get these supplies through, for Chris, for Esperanza, and maybe, just maybe, for a chance to make things right with the daughter he'd lost. The night settled over the town, heavy and restless, as the team braced for the storm they knew was coming. The night draped Esperanza in a shroud of uneasy quiet, the Texas border town's streets lit only by the clinic's faint glow and the occasional flicker of a kerosene lamp. Jack Sullivan stood by the lead truck, his breath fogging in the cool air as he scanned the horizon with a pair of battered binoculars. The team had unloaded the last of the supplies, antibiotics, water purifiers, food, into the hands of Dr. Henry Brooks and his staff, including Sarah, who moved like a ghost through the clinic's chaos, unaware her father watched from the shadows. Ethan Carter's warning about the black SUV lingered in Jack's mind, a coiled snake waiting to strike. Los Lobos wasn't finished, not after Devil's Backbone. Tom Baxter leaned against the truck beside him, his Carolina drawl cutting through the stillness. "You think they'll hit us here, Jack, in a town full of sick kids?" His voice dripped with bitterness, the wound of Chris's loss still raw. Jack lowered the binoculars, his gray eyes hard. "Victor Salazar doesn't care about kids, he cares about control. We embarrassed him back there. He'll hit harder now." Luke Harper emerged from the clinic, wiping sweat from his brow. "Supplies are in. That little girl, Lily, she's stabilizing. Sarah's a damn miracle worker." Jack's chest tightened at the mention of his daughter, but he kept his face stone. "Good. Lock down the perimeter. Ethan's on overwatch. Anything moves, we'll know." Ben Riley joined them, his broad frame steady as ever. "I've got the east side covered, rigged some tripwires, nothing fancy, but it'll slow 'em down." Jack nodded. The team moved with the precision of old instincts, a brotherhood forged in fire, now tested again on home soil. But the riff with Tom gnawed at him. Chris's blood stained their hands, and Jack bore the weight of that call. Inside the clinic, Sarah Sullivan knelt beside Lily's cot, adjusting the IV drip with practiced care. The 8-year-old's fever had broken, her small hand clutching a tattered doll as she slept. Dr. Brooks approached, his voice low. "You've been at it for hours, Sarah. Take a break." She shook her head, auburn hair falling into her eyes. "Not yet. We've got more coming. People are drinking bad water faster than we can treat them." Brooks sighed, recognizing the stubborn streak she'd inherited from a father she hadn't seen in 5 years. Outside, the storm broke. Ethan's voice crackled through the radio, urgent but controlled. "Lead, this is 3, multiple vehicles, 5, maybe 6, approaching from the south, armed to the teeth, moving fast." Jack's hand flew to his rifle. "Copy. Everyone, positions now. They're here." The night erupted as Los Lobos descended. Pickup trucks roared into Esperanza's outskirts, their headlights slicing through the dark, machine guns mounted on beds spitting fire. Jack dove behind the truck, barking orders. "Tom, Luke, west flank. Ben, hold the east. Ethan, take out the gunners." Bullets chewed the dirt, shattering windows as townsfolk screamed and scattered. Victor Salazar's voice boomed from a bullhorn atop the lead truck. "You thought you could run from me? This town's mine now. Hand over the supplies or we burn it to the ground." Jack peeked over the hood, spotting Victor's scarred face in the glare. A predator drunk on vengeance. Isabel Ruiz stood beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the chaos, calculating. A rocket streaked from one of the trucks, slamming into the school across from the clinic, a makeshift shelter for the sick. The blast shook the ground, masonry crumbling as screams pierced the night. Jack's binoculars caught the wreckage and his heart stopped. "Sarah," he whispered, spotting her silhouette in the clinic doorway, staring at the ruin. Inside, Sarah dropped her clipboard, sprinting toward the school. "Lily's in there," she yelled to Brooks, who grabbed a med kit and followed. The girl's cot had been moved earlier, a precaution, but now she was trapped under debris. Sarah crawled through the dust-choked rubble, coughing as she clawed at broken planks. "Lily, hold on," she called, voice cracking. She found the girl, pale and still, pinned beneath a fallen beam. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she murmured, shoving with all her strength until the beam shifted. Lily's eyes fluttered open, weak. "You're like my mom." Jack saw it all through his scope, his breath hitching. He couldn't reach her, not yet. A Cartel truck barreled toward the school, its driver aiming to finish the job. Jack shouldered his rifle, firing 3 precise shots, 2 into the tires, 1 into the engine block. The vehicle swerved, crashing into a concrete barrier 10 yards from Sarah. The driver stumbled out, raising a pistol, but Jack's next shot dropped him cold, a father's instinct overriding a soldier's restraint. Tom flanked left, laying down suppressing fire with Luke, their rounds tearing through Cartel gunmen. "They're everywhere!" Luke shouted, ducking as bullets pinged off the truck. Ethan's sniper rifle cracked from the water tower, each shot a death knell. Gunners fell, trucks stalled. Ben's tripwires triggered, slowing the advance, but the enemy pressed on, fueled by Victor's rage. Sarah dragged Lily free, cradling her as Brooks rushed over with the kit. "She's alive, barely," he said, starting triage. Sarah looked up, eyes locking with Jack's across the chaos, 30 yards of contested ground between them. For a heartbeat, the gunfire faded, and recognition hit her like a punch. "Dad," she mouthed, disbelief warring with the dust in her throat. Jack nodded once, then turned back to the fight, his rifle barking again. Victor's bullhorn roared. "You can't stop us, Sullivan. This is just the start." Jack ignored him, signaling the team. "Push 'em back. Keep the clinic clear." The battle raged, Cartel numbers thinning under the veterans' disciplined fire. Sarah pulled Lily inside, her hands shaking as she bandaged the girl's cuts, her mind reeling. 5 years of silence, and here he was, gun in hand, saving her life like it was just another mission. The tide turned as Ethan disabled the last mounted gun. Victor cursed, retreating with Isabel to regroup. "They're too good," she hissed. "We need the heavy stuff." Victor glared at the burning wrecks. "Then get it. I want them dead by dawn." Jack slumped against the truck, chest heaving, as the gunfire quieted. Sarah stepped out, Lily safe inside, and approached him. Dust coated her scrubs, blood streaking one sleeve. Not hers. "You're here," she said, voice trembling. Jack met her gaze, years of guilt crashing in. "I had to be. Couldn't let you down again." She rushed forward, and he caught her in a fierce hug, both shaking as the night swallowed their words. Tom watched, his anger softening for a moment, but the weight of Chris's loss lingered. "Nice reunion," he muttered. "Hope it's worth it." Jack pulled back, nodding toward the horizon. "It's not over. They'll be back." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Then we fight together." Jack's heart swelled, but dread coiled beneath it. Los Lobos wasn't done, and the cost was rising. The air in Esperanza hung thick with smoke and the acrid sting of gunpowder as the echoes of the second assault faded into the Texas night. Jack Sullivan crouched beside the clinic's outer wall, his rifle still warm from the fight, his gray eyes scanning the darkened streets for any sign of Los Lobos' next move. The reunion with Sarah, an embrace born of chaos and 5 years' worth of buried pain, lingered in his chest, a fragile spark amid the storm. She stood a few yards away, tending to Lily inside the clinic's shattered doorway, her scrubs streaked with dust and blood. Jack's team spread out around the perimeter. Tom Baxter and Luke Harper on the west, Ben Riley on the east, Ethan Carter perched like a hawk atop the water tower. They'd beaten back Victor Salazar's thugs, but Jack knew the cartel wasn't done, not by a long shot. Inside a makeshift bunker 3 miles south, Isabel Ruiz stared at a flickering tablet screen, her sharp features etched with frustration. Victor Salazar paced beside her, his scarred hands flexing around a pistol, rage simmering in every step. "They're not just truckers," Isabel said, her voice low and precise. "They're trained, special forces like I warned you. We lost 15 men tonight." Victor spun on her, eyes blazing. "I don't care who they are. They humiliated me, us. Esperanza's ours, and I want those supplies." Isabel tapped the screen, pulling up a grainy map. "There's a cache nearby, an old smuggling tunnel we've stocked with rockets, machine guns, explosives. If we hit them with that, they won't stand a chance." Victor's grin was feral. "Do it. Send the best we've got. I want that town in ashes by sunrise." Isabel nodded, already barking orders into a radio. She didn't like the recklessness, but she knew better than to defy him. Not yet. Back in Esperanza, Jack's radio crackled with Ethan's steady voice. "Lead, this is 3, got movement, South Ridge, half a mile out. 15 hostiles, heavily armed, moving fast." Jack's stomach tightened. "Copy, everyone defensive positions. They're coming hard." Tom shot him a look from across the street, his Carolina drawl bitter. "Harder than leaving Chris behind? Hope you're ready to lose more." Jack ignored the jab, though it cut deep, and signaled the team to brace. The attack came like a thunderclap. Rockets streaked from the darkness, slamming into the town's outer defenses. One hit the east barricade where Ben and Luke held the line, the explosion hurling debris skyward. Luke screamed as shrapnel tore through his shoulder, blood soaking his jacket. "I'm hit," he yelled, collapsing behind a wrecked car. Ben dove to his side, ripping his sleeve to make a tourniquet. "Hold on, kid," Ben growled, his para-rescue calm kicking in. "You're not dying on me." Luke's face paled, his voice weak. "Tell Jack. Don't let him win." Jack heard the blast, spinning toward the east. "Ben, status," he barked into the radio. "Loop's down. Bad," Ben replied, hands slick with blood. "I've got him, but we're pinned." Jack cursed under his breath, the ghost of Chris's sacrifice clawing at him. He couldn't lose another, not tonight. But before he could move, Ethan's voice cut through again, urgent. "Lead, they're at the school, 6 hostiles, armed with rifles. They're going for hostages." Jack's head snapped toward the clinic where Sarah emerged, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're back at the school," she shouted, grabbing a medkit. "Lily and the others are still inside." Jack's blood ran cold. The school, where she'd nearly died an hour ago, was now a cartel target again. He faced a split-second choice: rush to save Luke or stop the hostage play. Tom's glare burned into him. "Don't you dare pull that shit again, Jack. Luke's one of us." "I know," Jack snapped, his voice raw. "Ben, keep him alive. Tom, Ethan, with me. We're hitting the school." He sprinted toward the wreckage, Sarah falling in beside him, unasked. "I'm coming," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Jack nodded, too focused to fight her stubbornness, a mirror of his own. The school loomed ahead, its shattered walls lit by muzzle flashes. 6 Los Lobos gunmen breached the entrance, shouting in Spanish as they rounded up patients, Lily among them. A tattooed thug grabbed a megaphone, his voice booming. "Surrender the supplies or these kids die, starting with this one." He yanked Lily forward, pressing a pistol to her head. She whimpered, clutching her doll, her small frame trembling. Jack signaled Tom and Ethan to flank. "Ethan, take the shooter. Tom, cover me." Ethan's rifle cracked from the tower, dropping the gunman in a spray of blood. Jack charged, firing controlled bursts, 2 more falling before they could react. Tom laid down suppressing fire, pinning the rest. Sarah darted in behind, reaching Lily as the girl collapsed, unharmed but shaking. "I've got you," Sarah whispered, scooping her up. The remaining 3 gunmen retreated, but not before lobbing a grenade into the school's rubble. "Get down!" Jack roared, shoving Sarah and Lily behind a wall as the blast rocked the building. Dust choked the air, but they were alive. Jack spun, spotting a glint on the ridge, a rocket launcher aimed at the clinic. "They've got a cache out there," he muttered, piecing it together. "That's their heavy stuff." He keyed the radio. "Ben, we're clear here. How's Luke?" Ben's voice was grim. "Hanging on. Barely. Lost a lot of blood." Jack clenched his fists. "Hold him. We're ending this." He turned to Tom. "We hit that cache. Blow it before they reload." Tom nodded, his anger simmering but focused. "For Chris. For Luke." They moved south, tracing the rocket trails to a hidden tunnel entrance half buried in the hillside. Inside, crates of RPGs and ammo gleamed in the dim light, enough to level Esperanza. Jack rigged a charge from their own stash, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Light it up." Tom struck a flare, tossing it in. The explosion ripped through the night, a fireball swallowing the cartel's ace. Back at the clinic, Sarah cradled Lily, her hands steady despite the chaos. Jack returned, soot-streaked and weary, meeting her gaze. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft. She nodded, tears brimming. "You saved her." Again. He touched her shoulder, a silent promise forming, but Ethan's voice broke the moment. "Lead, they're pulling back, but they've got more out there. This ain't over." Jack looked south, where Los Lobos licked their wounds. Victor's rage would burn hotter now, and Luke's life hung by a thread. "No," he agreed, "it's not." Sarah squeezed his arm. "We'll fight through it, together." For the first time in years, Jack felt her trust, fragile but real. But the cost, Chris gone, Luke fading, pressed down like a stone. How much more could they lose? The pre-dawn stillness over Esperanza carried the weight of exhaustion and gunpowder. The Texas border town scarred, but standing after Los Lobos' brutal counterstrike. Jack Sullivan leaned against the clinic wall, his gray eyes tracing the horizon, where the cartel's fireball had faded into a smoldering memory. The night's toll pressed hard. Chris Navarro gone at Devil's Backbone, Luke Harper clinging to life in a makeshift triage room, and the fragile truce with Sarah, his estranged daughter, flickering like a candle in the wind. She knelt inside, bandaging Lily's cuts, her auburn hair catching the dim light as volunteers moved supplies around her. Jack's team held the line, Tom Baxter pacing the west perimeter, Ethan Carter perched on the water tower, Ben Riley guarding Luke. But the air buzzed with the promise of more bloodshed. Miles away, in a ramshackle safe house south of the Rio Grande, Victor Salazar slammed his fist into a splintered table, his scarred face twisted with fury. "They blew the cash," he roared, turning to Isabel Ruiz, who stood calm amid his storm. Her sharp eyes flicked over a radio console, processing the night's losses. 25 men dead, half our heavy weapons gone, she said, voice steady. "These aren't truckers, Victor, they're a unit. Elite, coordinated. We underestimated them." Victor's lip curled. "Then we stop playing games. Send the kill team. Our best. I want Sullivan's head on a spike by morning." Isabel hesitated, her mind weighing the cost. "That's 6 of our top contractors, ex-military themselves. If they fail, we're exposed." Victor grabbed her arm, his grip iron. "They won't fail. Esperanza's ours, and those bastards die tonight." Isabel pulled free, nodding curtly, and relayed the order. She didn't trust Victor's rage, but she trusted her own precision, and these assassins were her creation. Back in Esperanza, Jack's radio crackled with Ethan's voice, low and urgent. "Lead, this is 3, single vehicle. Black SUV, south approach 1 mile out. 6 occupants, moving tactical. They're not regular grunts." Jack's spine stiffened. "Copy, everyone tighten up. Assassins incoming." "Ethan, keep eyes on. Tom, Ben with me at the clinic, we draw 'em in." Tom jogged over, his Carolina drawl laced with exhaustion. "More of 'em? After that beating?" Jack nodded, checking his rifle. "Victor's desperate. These'll be pros hired guns, not cannon fodder." Ben emerged from the clinic, his broad frame tense. "Luke's stable, for now. Dr. Brooks says he's got hours, not days, unless we get him to a real hospital." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we hold till dawn. Border Patrol's coming." Sarah stepped out, overhearing. "You're staying?" she asked, her voice a mix of worry and resolve. Jack met her gaze, 5 years of distance shrinking in that moment. "Have to. They won't stop till we're dead or the supplies are theirs." She nodded, grabbing a flashlight. "Then I'm helping, keeping the wounded safe." Jack didn't argue. Her mother's stubbornness shone through, and he wouldn't take that from her again. The SUV rolled into town, slow and deliberate, its tinted windows swallowing the faint streetlight. 6 figures disembarked. Black gear, suppressed rifles, moving like shadows with military precision. Jack signaled the team into position. Tom and Ben behind parked cars, Ethan lining up shots from above. "Let him think we're sloppy," Jack whispered. "Draw him to the clinic, then hit hard." The assassins fanned out, converging on the clinic where faint light spilled from broken windows. Their leader, a wiry man with a shaved head and a predator's gait, raised a fist, halting his team. He scanned the shadows, senses razor-sharp, then motioned forward. Jack waited, breath steady, until they crossed the open square. "Now," he hissed into the radio. Ethan's rifle cracked, the leader dropping with a muted thud, headshot, clean. Jack and Tom opened fire, catching 2 more in a crossfire of disciplined bursts. Ben flanked right, his shotgun roaring, shredding a 4th assassin's cover. The remaining 2 dove behind a dumpster, returning fire with eerie accuracy. Bullets grazed Jack's arm, drawing blood, but he didn't flinch. "Push 'em!" he barked, advancing with Tom. Inside, Sarah shielded Lily as glass shattered above them. A wounded cartel gunman from the earlier fight groaned on a cot nearby, his leg bandaged. A nurse hissed, "Why's he still here? He shot at us!" Sarah shook her head, checking his IV. "I don't pick who lives or dies, I save them." The man stirred, eyes fluttering open. "They're coming," he rasped. 6 killers for Sullivan." Sarah froze, then grabbed her radio. "Dad, he says they're assassins, 6 of them." Jack's voice crackled back. "We've got 'em, stay low." Outside, the last 2 assassins regrouped, one pulling a grenade. Ethan's next shot punched through his chest, the grenade rolling harmlessly away. The final killer sprinted for the SUV, but Ben tackled him, pinning him to the dirt. "You're done," Ben growled, zip-tying his wrists. Captain John Hayes rolled in with a Border Patrol unit just as the dust settled. his weathered face grim. "Heard the fireworks," he said, stepping from his truck. "Caught these bastards clean. Nice work." Jack nodded, wiping blood from his arm. "They're Los Lobos' best. Means Victor's running scared." Hayes secured the prisoner, who spat in defiance. "You're dead men. Salazar's got friends. DEA, high up, you'll see." Jack's eyes narrowed, but before he could press, Isabel's voice cut through a captured radio. "Sullivan, you think this ends it? Victor worked with your feds, deals for intel. Keep digging, hero." The line went dead. Tom snorted, kicking the dirt. "Bullshit! He's lying to save his skin." Jack wasn't so sure. Maybe. But if it's true, we've got bigger problems. Sarah approached, her face pale but resolute. "That guy in there, he warned us, said they'd kill you first." Jack studied her, pride warring with guilt. "You saved him anyway?" "Yeah," she said, defiant. "He's a person, not a monster, and it paid off." Jack's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "Your mom be proud." She softened, but the moment broke as Ethan called down, "Lead, no more movement. They're licking their wounds, for now." Hayes clapped Jack's shoulder. "Border Patrol's here till sunup. Get Luke out, then we'll talk." Jack nodded, but Isabel's words gnawed at him. "DEA ties?" If Los Lobos had hooks in the system, this fight was far from over. He glanced at Sarah, now back with Lily, and felt the weight of every choice he'd made. Chris was gone, Luke was fading, and now a shadow loomed larger than the cartel itself. What had they stumbled into? Dawn crept over Esperanza, painting the Texas sky in streaks of orange and gray, but the border town's quiet was a fragile lie. Jack Sullivan stood in the clinic's shadow, his gray eyes tracing the bullet-riddled streets where Los Lobos assassins had fallen hours ago. The sting of his grazed arm faded beneath the weight of bigger wounds. Chris Navarro lost, Luke Harper fighting for life inside, and the haunting echo of Isabel Ruiz's radio taunt. "Victor worked with your feds." If true, this wasn't just a cartel war anymore. It was a betrayal stitched into the system Jack had sworn to serve decades ago. Sarah moved nearby, her scrub stained with Lily's blood and her own sweat, a quiet strength holding her upright. Their reunion, raw and unspoken, gave him something to cling to amid the chaos. Tom Baxter paced the perimeter, his Carolina drawl cutting through the stillness. "Dia, huh? Think that punk was serious, Jack? Cartels and feds in bed together?" Jack wiped grime from his rifle, voice low. "Wouldn't be the first time. If it's real, we're not just fighting Los Lobos, we're fighting ghosts in suits." Ethan Carter descended from the water tower, his sniper's calm unshaken. "Explains why Border Patrol's always one step behind. Someone's tipping him off." Ben Riley emerged from the clinic, his broad face etched with worry. "Luke's holding, just. Dr. Brooks says we've got a window to move him, but it's closing fast." Captain John Hayes approached, his Border Patrol badge glinting in the dawn light. "My boys are securing the prisoners. State police are en route, 2 hours out. You've got a hell of a crew, Sullivan." Jack nodded, but Isabel's words gnawed at him. "Thanks, Captain. Keep that assassin talking. See if he's got more on this DEA angle." Hayes agreed, heading back to his truck, but a shadow flickered in his eyes, something Jack couldn't place. Inside the clinic, Sarah adjusted Luke's IV, her hands steady despite the exhaustion carving lines into her face. Dr. Henry Brooks hovered nearby, his voice soft. "He's a fighter, but that shoulder's a mess, needs surgery, real hospital, not this." Sarah nodded, glancing at the door where Jack stood moments ago. "My dad'll get him out. He always finds a way." "Your dad, Sullivan?" She sighed, a ghost of a smile breaking through. "Yeah, 5 years apart, and he shows up in a fire." The calm shattered when Jack's radio hissed with Isabel's voice, cold and deliberate. "Sullivan, you're a dead man walking. Check your allies. Captain Hayes isn't what he seems." A crackle followed, then a boy's voice, scared, trembling. "Dad, help me. They've got me." Jack's blood ran cold. "Michael?" Hayes whispered, stumbling from his truck, face ashen. He grabbed Jack's arm, voice breaking. "That's my son, Michael. Los Lobos has him." Jack's team closed ranks, rifles up, as Hayes fumbled for words. "They called an hour ago. Said if I don't destroy your evidence, every photo, every statement, they'll kill him. I rigged your last truck. Bombs in the cargo bay. One button and it's gone." He held up a small detonator, thumb hovering over it, eyes wild with terror. "He's 19, Jack. My only kid." Tom lunged forward, fury boiling over. "You bastard, you'd blow us up for them?" He raised his rifle, but Jack shoved it down. "Stand down, Tom." His voice was steel, but his mind raced. Chris's death, Luke's blood, and now this. The evidence, dashcam footage, prisoner confessions, was their ticket to bury Los Lobos. Without it, Victor walked free. Sarah burst from the clinic, radio in hand, her face pale. "Dad, I heard it. Michael's with them?" She dropped to her knees beside Jack, grabbing his sleeve. "Don't do it, Dad. Don't shoot him. He's just trying to save his son. I'd do the same for you." Her voice cracked, tears spilling. "I lost you once. I can't watch you turn into them." Jack's rifle stayed level at Hayes, his finger tight on the trigger. 3 decades of special forces screamed at him, "Neutralize the threat, secure the mission." But Sarah's plea cut deeper, slicing through the soldier to the father beneath. Tom shouted, "Shoot him, Jack! He's a traitor! Chris died for this! Luke's dying for it!" Ben stepped in, voice calm but firm. "He's right, Jack, but so's she. There's another way." Hayes trembled, tears streaking his dust-caked face. "I didn't want this. Michael got mixed up with them, ran messages to pay for his mom's cancer meds. He quit, but they never let go." Jack's eyes narrowed. "He worked for Los Lobos?" Hayes nodded, broken. "Last year. I thought he was clean, until tonight." The seconds ticked, each one a hammer on Jack's resolve. Ethan's voice cut through the radio. "Lead, clock's running, what's the call?" Jack stared at Hayes, then Sarah, her eyes pleading, not for mercy but for the man he could be. He lowered the rifle, voice hoarse. "Give me the detonator, John. We'll get Michael back. Together." Hayes hesitated, then dropped it into Jack's hand, collapsing to his knees. "Thank you, God, thank you." Tom spat in disgust. "You're soft, Jack. This'll bite us, mark my words." Jack ignored him, turning to Sarah. "Get Luke ready to move. We're not losing anyone else." She nodded, rushing inside while Jack faced Hayes. "Where are they holding him?" Hayes pointed south, voice shaking. "Old barn, 2 miles out. They'll kill him if I don't—" "You won't," Jack cut in. "We're hitting him hard and fast." He keyed the radio. "Ethan, Ben, prep for extraction. Tom, you with me and Hayes. We're bringing his kid home." Tom glared but complied, slinging his rifle. "For Chris," he muttered, "not this coward." They moved out, a tense unit threading through Esperanza's outskirts. The barn loomed ahead, a weathered shell under the rising sun. 2 Los Lobos guards patrolled outside, rifles lax, overconfident. Ethan's sniper shot dropped one silently. Ben's shotgun took the other. Inside, Michael Hayes sat bound, bruised but alive, a radio crackling with Isabel's voice. "Time's up, Captain. What's it gonna be?" Jack kicked the door in, Tom covering as Hayes rushed to his son. "Dad!" Michael sobbed, clinging to him. Jack cut the ropes, hauling the kid up. "Move! Now!" They sprinted back as Isabel's voice faded, her plan crumbling. Hayes hugged Michael tight, tears flowing. "I'm sorry, son." Back at the clinic, Jack handed the intact evidence to Ethan. "Get this to Border Patrol, clean chain of custody." Sarah met his gaze, pride in her eyes. "You did the right thing." Jack nodded, but doubt lingered. Hayes was safe, Michael alive, but a traitor walked free. Had he traded justice for mercy? Los Lobos still breathed, and the DEA's shadow loomed. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The morning sun burned through the haze over Esperanza, casting long shadows across the Texas border town's battered streets. Jack Sullivan stood in the clinic's doorway, his gray eyes tracing the horizon where Los Lobos had retreated, their assassin's blood still staining the dirt. The weight of the night pressed on him. Chris Navarro's sacrifice, Luke Harper's fading pulse, and Captain John Hayes' betrayal, undone by a father's desperation. Sarah moved inside, her steady hands tending to the wounded, her presence a quiet anchor after 5 years apart. The evidence, dash cam footage, prisoner confessions, sat secure in Ethan Carter's truck, a lifeline to bury Victor Salazar's empire. But Isabel Ruiz's chilling words echoed in Jack's mind. This isn't the end. Tom Baxter approached, his Carolina drawl thick with exhaustion. You let Hayes walk, Jack? After he rigged that bomb? Christ be ashamed. Jack met his glare, unflinching. He's got a kid, Tom. I made a call. You don't have to like it. Tom spat into the dust. Yeah, well, I don't. Hope it doesn't cost us more. Jack didn't reply, the rift between them widening, a scar from choices no one could unmake. Ethan descended from the water tower, his sniper rifle slung over his shoulder. Evidence is locked down. Border Patrol's got it now. State police are rolling in too. Ben Riley joined them, his broad frame weary but resolute. Luke's prepped for evac. Chopper's 30 minutes out. He's hanging on, but it's close. Jack nodded, relief warring with dread. Good. We've got a window. Let's use it. Captain Hayes stood nearby, his son Michael clinging to him, the boy's bruised face a map of cartel cruelty. Jack, I'll turn myself in, Hayes said, voice hollow. What I did, rigging that bomb, it was wrong. Jack studied him, then shook his head. You saved your kid. We'll deal with the rest later. Right now, we finish Los Lobos. Michael looked up, eyes wet. I didn't know they'd do this. I just wanted to help Mom. Jack's jaw tightened. Another kid caught in the border's grind, like too many he'd seen overseas. The radio crackled with a new voice. General Robert Grant, a towering figure Jack hadn't seen since Afghanistan. Sullivan, this is Grant. Heard you've stirred a hornet's nest down there. I'm inbound with DOJ clearance. ETA 1 hour. That evidence better be airtight. Jack keyed back. It is, sir. Los Lobos is bleeding. We've got him on the ropes. Grant's growl came through. Good. Governor's green-lit emergency ops. We're hitting their whole network. Safe houses, routes, everything. You've got my backing. Across the border, Victor Salazar raged in a crumbling villa, his scarred hands smashing a chair against the wall. They've got my kill team, he bellowed, turning to Isabel Ruiz, who stood by a map, her sharp eyes cold. 30 dead, Victor, she said, voice cutting like a blade. Your obsessions gutted us. Los Sombras are circling our territory now. Victor grabbed her collar, snarling. Then we crush them all. Sullivan, his crew, Esperanza. Send every man we've got. Isabel pulled free, unfazed. We've got 50 left. Barely. Feds are moving. Your friends in DEA can't save you now. Victor's eyes widened. What? She smirked, bitter. Your deals, trading intel for leniency? They're leaking. Sullivan's evidence will bury you. Victor roared, firing his pistol into the ceiling. Then we take him down with us. In Esperanza, Jack gathered the team outside the clinic, the hume of an approaching chopper signaling Luke's evacuation. Grant's hitting Los Lobos across the region. Raids start now. Our evidence seals it. Victor's done. Ethan handed over a tablet streaming live feeds. Border Patrol and State Police storming cartel hideouts, cuffing gunmen, seizing drugs. Tom watched, arms crossed. About damn time. But what about Isabel? She's the brains. Victor's just the fist. She's next, Jack said, voice firm. Grant's got eyes on their HQ 5 miles south. We've cracked them open. Sarah emerged, her scrubs swapped for a jacket, Lily stable inside. Luke's on the bird, she said, nodding toward the chopper lifting off. He'll make it, thanks to you. Jack's chest eased, a rare moment of relief. Thanks to all of us. The radio flared again, Grant's voice, sharp. "Sullivan, we've hit their main compound. Victor Salazar's in custody, screaming about DEA payoffs. Isabel Ruiz too, she's stonewalling, but we've got enough." Jack's team exchanged looks, the assassin's claim ringing true. "Copy, sir," Jack replied. "What's Victor saying?" Grant's tone darkened. "Names, dates, deals. Says DEA traded immunity for intel on rival cartels. If it checks out, heads roll in." Tom snorted. "Told Pew. System's rotten. Chris died for this mess." Jack didn't argue, the sting of truth biting deep. Ethan spoke up, calm as ever. "Doesn't matter who's dirty, we've got Salazar. Los Lobos is breaking." Ben nodded. "Luke's safe, supplies are through. That's what counts." Across the border, Victor sat in cuffs, his rage boiling over as feds dragged him to a van. "You think you've won, Sullivan?" he shouted, voice echoing. "I've got names, agents, cops. They'll bury you too." Isabel sat silent nearby, her sharp mind already plotting. "This isn't over," she muttered to herself, eyes glinting. "Los Sombras will feast on our corpse, and then come for you." A Fed slammed the van door, but her words lingered like a curse. In Esperanza, the state police rolled in, securing the town as Grant's chopper touched down. The general strode out, his ramrod posture unchanged from Jack's army days. "Hell of a fight, Sullivan," he said, clapping Jack's shoulder. "You've gutted Los Lobos. 40 arrests, 10 safe houses down. But this DEA leak, it's ugly. We're digging, and it'll get messier." Jack nodded, weary. "We didn't start this for the feds, sir, just to get the job done." Grant's eyes softened. "I know. You've saved this town, maybe more, but Los Sombras are moving already, picking at the scraps. This isn't a clean win." Jack glanced at Sarah, now helping Brooks with the last patients. "Clean enough, for now." Tom stepped forward, his anger cooled but not gone. "What about Hayes? He walks free after that stunt?" Grant frowned. "He's in custody, voluntary surrender. Kid's clear, but John's facing charges. You made the right call, Jack. Kept the evidence intact." Tom grunted, unconvinced. "Still stinks." Sarah approached, her voice soft but firm. "You did what I asked, Dad. Gave him a chance. That's enough for me." Jack met her gaze, a flicker of hope breaking through the guilt. "Not sure it's enough for them," he said, nodding at Tom. She squeezed his hand. "It will be." The sun climbed higher, illuminating a town, scarred but alive. Los Lobos was broken, Victor caged, Isabel silenced, for now, but Grant's warning hung heavy. Los Sombras loomed and the DEA shadows stretched far. Jack felt the fight shift, from bullets to secrets, and wondered what price they'd pay next. The midday sun blazed over Esperanza, its harsh light exposing the Texas border town's wounds. Bullet-pocked walls, charred husks of cartel trucks, and the faint haze of smoke still clinging to the air. Jack Sullivan stood on the clinic steps, his gray eyes tracing the horizon, where Los Lobos had been broken, their empire shattered by Dawn's raids. Victor Salazar and Isabel Ruiz sat in cuffs miles away, their reign gutted by General Robert Grant's blitz, but the cost carved deep. Chris Navarro's blood at Devil's Backbone, Luke Harper's fight for life, and the fragile redemption Jack had found with Sarah, his daughter, after 5 years of silence. The evidence had done its job. 40 arrests, 10 safe houses down, but the shadow of Los Sombras and a crooked DEA lingered like a storm on the edge of... Inside the clinic, Sarah Sullivan adjusted a bandage on Lily's arm, the 8-year-old's small frame dwarfed by the cot. Dr. Henry Brooks hovered nearby, his voice soft. "She's tough. Fever's gone. Cuts are clean. You pulled her through, Sarah." She smiled faintly, brushing Lily's hair back. "Had to. She's why we're here." Lily stirred, her voice a whisper. "You're staying, right?" Sarah nodded, handing her a wilted flower plucked from the rubble. "Right here, kiddo." Jack watched from the doorway, his chest tight with a mix of pride and guilt. 5 years ago, he'd walked out on her, Claire's death had broken them, and he'd chosen missions over mourning, leaving Sarah to fend for herself. Now she stood, a lifeline in a town he'd fought to save, her mother's strength shining through. Tom Baxter approached, his Carolina drawl subdued. "Chopper got Luke out, hospital in San Antonio, docs say he'll live, but that shoulder's done. No more driving for him." Jack's shoulders sagged, relief warring with sorrow. "He made it. That's what matters. Chris didn't." Tom's eyes darkened, the rift over Hayes still raw. "Yeah, well, Luke paid a price. Hope it's worth it." Jack pulled Chris's letter from his pocket, the edges frayed but intact. "It is. For this." He handed it to Tom. "Get it to Danny, his boy in California. Tell him his dad was a hero." Tom took it, his anger softening as he read the scrolled words. "Every mile I drive, it's for you. Live clean." He folded it carefully, voice low. "I'll make sure he knows. Chris deserved better than that damn canyon." Jack nodded, the weight of that loss a shared burden. We all did. Ben Riley and Ethan Carter joined them, their faces etched with fatigue but resolve. "Border patrols locking down the town," Ben said, wiping sweat from his brow. "State police are sweeping the outskirts, no Los Lobos chatter yet." Ethan slung his rifle, his sniper's calm steady. "Los Sombras are moving though, picked up their signals south of the border. They're scavenging what's left." Jack's jaw tightened. "Grant warned us. Clean wind's a pipe dream. We've bought time, not peace." Sarah stepped out, overhearing, her jacket swapped for scrubs again. "Time's enough for now. Supplies are distributed, water's filtering, people are breathing easier." She glanced at Jack, a flicker of trust in her eyes. "You gave them that?" He met her gaze, the years between them shrinking. "We did. You're the one holding it together." She smiled, small but real. "Guess I learned from the best, even if he was gone too long." Jack's throat caught, the ghost of a laugh escaping. "Too damn long." General Grant strode up, his boots crunching gravel, his presence a throwback to Jack's army days. "Sullivan, you've turned this hellhole into a fortress. Los Lobos is done." Victor screaming in lockup, Isabel silent but cooked, DEA's scrambling. "Those leaks are real. Agents are under review, starting with a guy named Vargas." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Vargas? Heard he's dirty. Worked the border for years." Grant nodded, grim. "Patterns match, evidence vanishing, witnesses flipping. We've got a fight ahead in D.C., but your evidence started it." Tom snorted. "Great! Cartel's out, feds in. Same mess, different suits." Grant's gaze sharpened. "Not the same. We're cleaning house, slow but sure." Sarah handed Jack a cup of lukewarm coffee, her voice soft. "Luke's safe, Lily's alive. Focus on that, Dad. You can't fix everything." He took it, fingers brushing hers, a rare warmth cutting through the weariness. "Maybe not, but I can try for you." She squeezed his arm, a silent pact forming. Ben pulled a radio from his pack, tuning to a border patrol feed. "Listen, Los Sombras hit a Lobos stash 10 miles south. They're not waiting." Jack frowned, the news a cold splash on their victory. "Scavengers means they're hungry." "Esperanza's still a target." Grant clapped his shoulder. "You've got till dusk to rest. Then we plan. This ain't over." Tom lingered as the others dispersed, his voice low. Hayes turned himself in. "Kid's free, but John's facing time. You happy with that?" Jack sipped the coffee, bitter as the truth. "Not happy. Fair. He made a choice. So did I." Tom grunted, unconvinced. "Hope you're right, 'cause I'm not sure I'd make the same one." Inside, Lily sat up, her small hand clutching the flower. "Miss Sarah, you're like my mom was. Strong." Sarah's eyes welled, a tear slipping free. "I'll try, kiddo." She glanced at Jack through the window, their shared resolve a fragile bridge over years of hurt. Dr. Brooks approached, his tone earnest. "Stay, Sarah, permanently. This town needs you." She nodded, decisive. I'm in. For them. Jack stepped away, pulling Chris's letter from Tom and scribbling a note of his own. Danny, your dad saved us all. Be proud. Jack Sullivan. He handed it back. Make sure it gets there. Tom took it, a flicker of respect breaking through. Will do, for Chris. The sun climbed, illuminating a town reborn. Water flowing clean, kids breathing easier, a community standing tall. Jack felt Sarah's gaze, her choice to stay a mirror of his own restless duty. Luke would limp away, scarred but alive. Chris's legacy would reach Danny. Hope flickered, small, battered but real. Yet Los Sombras loomed, a shadow on the victory, and the DEA's rot promised more battles. Jack squared his shoulders, ready for what came next. Because for Sarah, for Esperanza, he'd never stop fighting. The sun dipped low over Esperanza, its amber rays brushing the Texas border town with a fleeting warmth that softened the scars of battle. Jack Sullivan stood at the edge of the clinic lot, his gray eyes fixed on the horizon where dust still settled from the night's chaos. The air carried the faint tang of smoke and the hum of life returning, kids splashing in clean water from the purifiers, families unpacking food rations. The clinic's steady rhythm of healing. Los Lopos lay broken. Victor Salazar and Isabel Ruiz in cuffs, their empire gutted by General Robert Grant's raids. But the cost lingered like a shadow. Chris Navarro's sacrifice, Luke Harper's shattered shoulder, and the fragile bridge Jack had rebuilt with Sarah, his daughter, after 5 lost years. The DEA's rot and Los Sombras' lurking threat promised more fights, but for now, Esperanza breathed. Tom Baxter leaned against the lead truck, his Carolina drawl quiet for once. Luke's gonna make it. Docs in San Antonio say he's stable. Won't drive again, though. Jack nodded, relief a thin thread through the weight of loss. He's alive. That's enough. Chris didn't get that chance. Tom pulled Chris's letter from his pocket, the paper creased but sacred. Got a flight tomorrow, taking this to Danny myself. Kid deserves to know his dad was a damn hero. Jack's lips twitched, a rare half smile. Tell him we'll keep the fight going. For Chris. Ethan Carter and Ben Riley joined them, their gear packed, faces etched with the exhaustion of men who'd seen too much. Border patrols got the town locked down, Ben said, wiping grime from his hands. No Los Lobos chatter, yet. Ethan slung his rifle, his sniper's gaze drifting south. Los Sombras are out there. Picked up a signal an hour ago. We'll be back. They're not bluffing. Jack's jaw tightened. Let them come. We've faced worse. Sarah stepped from the clinic, her scrubs swapped for a jacket, her auburn hair catching the fading light. Lily trailed her, clutching the flowers Sarah had given her, a small emblem of survival. Water's running clean, Sarah said, her voice steady. Supplies are holding. Dr. Brooks says we've turned a corner. She met Jack's eyes, a spark of trust glowing there. You did this, Dad. He shook his head, voice low. We did. You're the one keeping it alive. General Grant approached, his boots crunching gravel, his presence a steady anchor. Sullivan, you've given this town a shot, more than most get. Los Lobos is toast. 50 arrests now, counting stragglers. DEA's under a microscope. Vargas is suspended, more names coming. But Los Sombras are moving fast. Hit 2 Lobos stashes today. Jack frowned, the news a cold weight. Scavengers. They'll want Esperanza next. Grant nodded, grim. Likely. You've got till nightfall to rest. Then we plan phase 2. Jack glanced at Sarah, then the team. We're not resting. Not yet. This town needs more than a breather. Sarah stepped closer, her tone firm. I'm staying. Permanently. Brooks needs me. Lily needs me. Esperanza's home now. Jack's chest tightened, pride and fear colliding. You sure? This place is a target. Los Sombras, whatever's left of Lobos. She smiled, small but fierce. I'm sure. Someone's got to fight for it, like you taught me. Tom watched, his anger over Hayes softened by the moment. "She's got your guts, Jack. Hope she's got your luck, too." Jack chuckled, a rare sound. "She's got more than that. She's got Claire's heart." Sarah's eyes welled, but she held steady. "You'll visit, right? Not just when it's burning down?" Jack pulled her into a hug, his voice rough. "Every chance I get. Promise." The team began loading the trucks, their mission shifting from survival to legacy. Jack handed Tom the keys. "Get Danny that letter, then we're back on the road. Other towns need us." Tom nodded, a flicker of respect breaking through. For Chris. Ethan and Ben climbed in, their silence a pact to keep going, warriors who'd never truly retire. As the convoy prepped to roll, Lily ran up, her small hand tugging Jack's sleeve. "You're leaving?" she asked, eyes wide. Jack knelt, meeting her gaze. "For now, kid, but Sarah's staying. She'll keep you safe." Lily handed him the flower, wilted but bright. "For you?" "'Cause you're strong too." Jack took it, tucking it into his jacket next to Chris's letter, a lump rising in his throat. "Thanks, Lily." The trucks rumbled to life, dust swirling as they pulled out. Sarah stood with Lily, waving, her figure shrinking in Jack's rearview mirror. The radio crackled with Ethan's voice, calm but edged. "Lead, got a low Sombras signal 10 miles south. We'll be back. They're watching." Jack gripped the wheel, voice steady. "Copy, let 'em watch. We'll be ready." 3 months later, the desert stretched wide under a golden sunset as Jack led a new convoy back to Esperance. The town had bloomed, water flowed clear, the clinic hummed with life, and Sarah stood at the entrance, her smile breaking through the dust. Lily ran out, waving, her laughter a sound of triumph. The supplies, more meds, more filters, rolled in behind him, a promise kept. Jack stepped from the truck, meeting Sarah's embrace, her voice soft. "You came back." He nodded, holding her tight. "Always will." Tom emerged, Danny's letter delivered, a weight lifted. "Kid's proud. Starting college next fall. Christ, love that." Ethan and Ben unloaded, their steady hands a testament to the brotherhood that endured. The sun sank, painting the horizon in hues of gold and amber, a fleeting beauty in a land scarred by war. But the peace was temporary. Los Sombras lurked, the DEA's secrets festered, and Jack knew the road ahead held more battles. He looked at Sarah, at Lily, at the town they'd saved. This wasn't the end, just a pause. "You staying this time?" Sarah asked, half teasing. Jack shook his head, a wry smile breaking through. "Not yet. Others need us. But I'll be here, every chance." She nodded, understanding the man he was, the man she'd chosen to forgive. The convoy rolled out again the next dawn, a silhouette against the desert vastness, chasing the next fight. Esperanza stood stronger, a beacon of hope amid the border's grind. Jack glanced back once, Sarah's wave a lifeline he'd never lose again. Los Sombras waited, but so did he, ready, always, for what came next.